look first at my letter of credit, I know that $10,000 is going to be secured, and I can't really use it from the day that the letter of credit is opened. And my suppliers told me it's going to take 2 months to produce the goods. It's going to take 8 weeks, so it's tied up all through September and October, and they ship it on November 1st. And it's going to take 3 weeks to get here, so I won't see those goods until the end of November, but my money, again, is now been paid to the person that manufactured this fabric. Now I've got to cut and sew the garments, so that's going to happen over the next couple of months, and I can start shipping on February 1st to my customers, but they also have 30-day terms to pay me. So I will not see a return on my investment until March. That money's tied up, plus I've added to that. Sewing that is on top of it all, and got all the things. So you can kind of think about, an HEG's kind of a situation. If I have pro forma, this is just not even going to work at all. I mean, that one I might just completely risk everything, and I'm certainly not going to see any return until March either. But I may not even see the fabric, but the fabric might be damaged. If I've got payment terms, the basic docs against payment, I don't have to release my funds until the day that they ship. So from November 1st when they ship it, now my money is only tied up for 4 months instead of 6 months until I got to return on my investment. If I get 30 days, I don't have to pay it until December 1st. Now it's only tied up for 3 months. If I get 60 days, 2 months, 90 days, 1 month, and 120, I'm basically going to be paid at the same time I have to pay my suppliers. So there's the cash flow. If you can work it so that you're getting paid by your customers at the same time your bills are due, that's what's the best situation. So it's the timing of these things too. How long will my money be tied up before I'm going to see a return on my investment? And, that's where a business plan, a financial plan is really, really important, when starting a business, because you aren't going to see something for a while. But that's the difference on those. That's the truth. I mean, it does help you kind of, and chances are in the beginning, this is what's going to happen. Now, this is more exaggerated, maybe it's, they can deliver it to you next week, and you can ship garments a couple of weeks after that, maybe it's not that long, but it's still, you've got to look at it, how long am I willing to lay out money and not get a return on that investment. That's the financial part of it. Let's take a break, and I'm going to talk about sourcing here in the United States as well as in California. Years ago, due to a lot of employee, mistreatment of employees, lack of clarity on what, employment laws existed that weren't necessarily specific to the apparel industry, but were general ones. These kinds of labor abuses, health and safety standards, and the state of California just gets sick and tired of people saying, well, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. They decided to start regulating it. And through the Department of Industrial Relations, if you do business in the apparel industry, whether it's textiles or apparel, and anything that's related, you must get a garment registration. And basically, when you go, and I believe I have a link here in the website for you. If I don't, make sure I let you guys check this out. But basically, there are rules and regulations. So let's go to that page to start with. Of defining who is a person or a garment manufacturer. I will read the garment manufacturer one because that's the one that's most interesting. So person, it can include a corporation, a limited liability company, it doesn't necessarily have to be an individual, but anything that represents, somebody who employs people, who does, employees or services of a manufacturer or supplier could be considered that person. But garment manufacturing really is the part that has to be defined. And garments, it means cutting, sewing, cutting, making, processing, repairing, finishing, assembling, or otherwise preparing any garment or any article of wearing apparel or accessories designed or intended to be worn by an individual, including but not limited to clothing, hats, gloves, handbags, hosieries, ties, scarves, and belts for sale or resale by any person or any persons contracting to have those operations performed. So you may not be a fabric supplier, but you want to buy fabric from that fabric supplier. You have to have a garment contractor's license as well. In the state of California, because they want to make sure that you know what the laws are too. Because in the state of California, when you go do business with a supplier, you are now also liable for any violations that they may be accused of in employment laws and health and safety. You can be enjoined and fined just as much as they are. So you've got to make sure that the company is compliant, that they're following all the human rights regulations, employment laws, health and safety laws. Or you can get sued too, just like Forever 21 does all the time. Yeah.
Does that go for like home sewers or like?
No. For an individual, that's not really intended for for wholesale and resale. I mean, you're just making something for somebody. But if you look like you're producing, multiple units for somebody.
That's what I mean. Yeah, if you're working out of your home.
Yeah. Because you're not licensed to even have that kind of a business out of your home. You have to be in a designated business area. So if somebody finds out about it, it only happens, you only get fined if somebody finds out about claims. But it's not that difficult to actually get the garment contractor's license. And some of them are, some of the basic requirements are, things you'd want to do anyway. So let's go back here.
People who sell on Etsy and stuff
Right.
like that.
So basically what happens here, here's the instructions are for that. So, who must register again? The person that I mentioned before, and what garment manual. So, and what you're making sure is that minimum wages are being paid, time and a half for overtime, again, liability stuff. Change the application process. Okay. So basically, somebody who is a representative of the company, somebody who is in an ownership capacity or a manager capacity can apply for this garment contractor's license. And and what you do is you have to, and it's the license is good for 1 year from the date of issuance, and you have to take a test. It's similar to a driver's test. They just want to make sure that you do know what minimum wage is and when you have to pay overtime and what the health and safety laws are, so that you won't be in violation of these things later on, hopefully. And it's $25, I believe, unless they come out. Okay, the fees, yes. Ooh, it's changed. Oh my goodness. It used to be 20. Oh, this is for the okay. The test is $25. The license itself, you can see here. So if you plan on doing less than $100,000, it's a $250 a year fee, which is tax deductible. And then $100 to $500, $350, and so on and so forth. So, the license itself. But the test is a $25 fee. They've got it in multiple languages, so they, people who may not, have English as their first language have the option to take it in their native tongue. They offer like 7 different languages for this test. And basically on the form, you'll see, when you fill it out, your application, the only other requirements you must also be able to provide is you need to have a state tax ID, which last I checked, I think was around $850 a year for the state tax ID, but again, it's all tax deductible. And if you do more than, I mean, it's all written off of the bottom line of what your revenues are. So if you do at least $850 worth of business, you're gonna just write it right off. So it's not a big deal. And you need an FEIN number as well, the state, that's the federal number. You do not want to use your personal social security number. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, one of the sites that I mentioned to you. Let me just pull this up. But there was a great article, or a series of articles in yesterday's blog. If any of you access Makers Row, are you familiar with that?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
they had how you get the FIEN number. Let me just,
So basically, it's a social security number for business.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you use your own personal one, then your personal is reliable, and you don't want it. You want it to be just your business. Now, and once you get that number, it will follow you even if you go into a new business. It'll be attached to the old number too. So if you're in any kind of violations, you're followed. It's a really good article. And I'm not sure if you can, I get the blog, so I'm not, I should check to see if anybody can get this. Oh, I know, I sent it from my personal account, so let me see if I can just get it on Makers Row, see if their articles are there. Talk about Makers Row about that. So, let's see. Makers Row, I'll just talk a little bit about what it is first of all. I know you all are familiar with Alibaba, most of you have had a chance to use that in some of your classes. And going back about 4 years ago, two partners who were in the business of manufacturing assembled watches, and they wanted to make them here in the United States. Were having a heck of a time trying to find supply chain. And they realized there was a real void. So they decided to start Makers Row and focus on apparel, textile, and now also including home furnishings, supply chain network, where you can go to a database and find suppliers who can make the things that you want. When they started, the first year and a half, it was free. Now they charge the buyer a fee, a monthly fee to access the information. They don't charge any of the people that actually have their companies up on the site. I think it should be the opposite. We have been asking for 2 years to get the FIDM access for the students here. And they don't ever respond. We're still waiting again. We just did it again recently. But they do sometimes, sometimes if you log in, you can actually get, like 30 minutes of free access to it. When you get to your sourcing assignment, I'm not encouraging you to have to pay for anything here, but it is a fabulous site. And they do have, time to time special offers. But let me just see this.
It's domestic only.
Domestic only, yeah. But they have a blog that you can sign up for. You don't have to be a member to get. Let me just see if I can get it. My problem, I can't, the way that the 360 program works for Windows, once you delete it off your home computer, it deletes it off everything, so I can't even grab this thing. But I'm going to see if I can, I know I said, oh, I do have it. I didn't say it. I put it over here. I'm sorry. I do have it. There's a whole bunch of articles yesterday. Okay, Makers Row. Okay, basic patent. Okay, here we go. Here it is. Makers Row. But how using an EIN for your fashion business and how it can protect you. And so this blog actually talks about why you want to make sure you get an EIN number and not use your social security number, because you will, really hurt yourself. A lot of people, they start a business and that's what they do, they use their social security number. Not a good idea, not a good idea. But you can't, if you go into the Baker website, you can sign up for their, subscribe to their daily blog. It's not daily. Sometimes it's daily, sometimes it's once a week. With articles, they had a whole bunch of them yesterday, covering all kinds of things from patent protection, determining when to trademark, FTC label requirements, know about your non-disclosure agreement, legal startups for startups. So, a lot of good information that was posted yesterday. So, anyway, but again, this is what you have to do. Let's go back to so again, you have your EIN number and then all your other business information on this application. But you will have to have those and you need to get the license. And then pay the fee. But first you have to take the test. It's kind of, it's these step-by-step process that you go through, just like you get a driver's license. If you're under the age of 18 and all the different things you have to do now to get a full-fledged driver's license. So anyway, that's doing business here in California. Supply chain here in the United States is really changed a lot over the last 20 years. Due to the fact that so many of the businesses went offshore, and where we used to have a lot of fabric suppliers in this time who actually manufactured fabrics. They're, for the most part, not most of them. There are some really good ones here, a handful left. They're quite good, they've been in business for years. But for the most part, the supply chain here in LA and New York is what I call domestic importers. And what these companies do is they have developed relationships with suppliers all over the world that they do business with on a regular basis. And they provide a assortment of different fabrics and trims, depending on what their business is. Show you an example of one. Here. Okay. Come on. Rather than actually manufacturing the fabric themselves, they find suppliers all over the world who can provide a variety of different types of fabrics that they feel like they have an opportunity to sell to their customer base. Basically, most of which is probably here in LA. And you can see they have wovens, they have knits, and they have a listing here of all kinds of fabrics that they provide. From Bedford to Bamberg to burnout, canvas, chambray, chenille, chiffon, corduroy, all kinds of fabrics. So you can kind of have one-stop shopping. Because if you were to go to one of the knit suppliers in this town, such as Antex, all they can give you is knit fabrics. And then they have a limit on the kinds of knit fabrics they can produce. They don't produce all kinds of knit fabrics. They have a limit on what they do. So this was a huge shift in our supply chain here. Nobody was really making it here anymore, and everything was coming from overseas, but you have these representative companies that can provide all a variety of fabrics to you. And if you don't see exactly what you want, say, chiffon, for instance. Here, let's go there. So they basically have chiffon, they have some solids, and they have a dot chiffon there, but if you wanted printed chiffon, you might say, what? I need printed chiffon. Can you get me printed chiffons? They would be able to provide you with that service as well. So you're not just limited to what they show is what they feel are the fabrics they'd like to sell. They can also act as your agent and get you what you want. So you don't have to try and figure out where to get it overseas. And you're also buying it here based on a landed price here in Los Angeles. So it's really domestic. That's what I call it, domestic importers. Whereas when you get to your importing one, you'd be buying it directly from that supplier and paying to them and having to pay for the freight and everything else that has to come on top of that. One of the advantages of it, working with a domestic importer would be the fact that they are doing business with a wide variety of customers. They're not just worried about supplying you, so maybe you only need a couple hundred yards of different colors of chiffon, you can buy a couple hundred yards. And what they're going to do is, because they're buying thousands of yards, they're going to share that cost savings and pass that along to you. Because if you try to go find a couple hundred yards on your own, you're not going to be able to find it. And you're going to pay a premium if you can't find it. So they can negotiate on behalf of all of their customer base. Plus, they're taking responsibility for the quality. Again, you don't have to worry about those purchase orders saying, I need all the testing and everything else. They're going to do that for you, and then you're going to ask them to re-support, their findings and the goods are first quality goods. So they go through all the headaches. You see the same thing with the trim companies here in town, and also some in New York. I mentioned Kagan Trim earlier. I mean, huge variety of all kinds of trim items. And one of the things that's nice about going to companies that do offer a wide variety of products is that you're developing a relationship with them that is more than just buying one thing from them. You've got multiple opportunities, so it's easier to build a relationship. You don't have to deal with 50 different suppliers to get what you want. So this has become the trend here on our domestic sourcing options, that we have these domestic importers. Not to say that there still aren't some people who just do one thing, such, and I've mentioned these guys before. It's right here in town. Oh. I've said all kinds of look at it. Okay, zippers. Buchanan zippers. One of 4 zipper manufacturers in the United States. Okay. Yeah. Okay. One of 4 zipper companies in the United States. The only one west of the Mississippi. The other 3 are east of the Mississippi, and one of them being YKK, and a couple of other ones. This is what they do. They don't make anything else. They're not offering other kinds of trims. They offer you all kinds of zippers, and as I believe I showed you guys when we were looking at, for zipper information, they have, a variety of different types of zippers, from metal zippers to the nylon coils to the plastic molded types of zippers. There's a couple of different qualities of metal zippers that they offer. But this is all they did. They just make zippers. They didn't want to do anything else but make zippers. They do have to buy the tape from an import supply chain, but they're assembling zippers here in the United States and dyeing them. So that's pretty unique. You're not going to find button manufacturers in this country anymore. You're not going to find trim suppliers in this country anymore. You will find some people that are actually manufacturing labels here, but chances are the ribbon that they use for the labels is probably made overseas, and then it's printed here. And even the woven labels, they're not weaving those labels here. They're weaving them overseas. And they have, again, those label suppliers have a supply chain overseas. They're pretty wise. It's a different supply chain than it used to be. There used to be there still is, an organization here in Los Angeles called ALA. Please forget it's .org. Come on. Okay, we'll just use the other word. Association of Los Angeles. And let's see if we can find there. Gosh, everybody. Whoa. Really having a hard time today. What's my Google? I'm using the maybe I should go on Google.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe Google right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna get on Google. I didn't realize, maybe that's the problem. Let me go to Google search. That's just weird. Okay, well, this may be why. I think the California Fashion Association acquired Tally, and that may be why they're now, it merged the two units together so there wasn't two different organizations. But the California Fashion Association, they provide you with some guidance to help you find suppliers here in California, not only fabrics and trims and labels, but also sewing contractors. And they're also advocates for the industry. Elsa Metchek, some of you might have had a chance to speak, she's constantly going around to the schools and talking in the industry. She's a huge advocate for the industry. She goes to Washington, D.C. all the time and lobbies on behalf of our business, our industry, and plus going to Sacramento too.
Who is that?
Elsa Metchek.
Oh,
She's over the knee. That's the gold. She's been around forever.
How do you spell the last name?
Metchk.
Oh, okay.
Elsa. Yes,
Interesting.
and she's the CEO of California. She's a founding person of the California Fashion Association. Again, because of the number of businesses here in Los Angeles, even across the country, has become so few that are actually manufactured here. It's hard to have members, of this organization because they do try to keep it, people who are actually manufacturing here in the state. Some of the other organizations that we that help to support sourcing here, we've got Cotton Incorporated. So Cotton Incorporated, if you're using a fabric that is cotton, they have a database. Get to it. Okay. They have something called Cotton Works. And in this database, they have a variety of different things that you can select from. Laces and trims that are made out of cotton. They have, and it includes not only U.S.-based companies, but also ones around the world. And basically, these companies, pay a fee to Cotton Incorporated to be part of their database. Knit fabrics, woven fabrics, and then they also have, if I go into woven, then you can also pick on, you can select garment washing company, garment washers, sewing contractors as well who work in these fabrications. And so you just check off, what you're looking for, and then you can select by country. All the countries are listed, so it's a pretty easy way to at least get some names of companies. And a lot of them also have links to the websites for these companies. If not, you Google search them and you're able to get to their website. But don't be surprised, a lot of, when we get to the sewing contractor portion of it, a lot of sewing contractors don't have websites. They're not, our industry isn't terribly sophisticated, especially the domestic one. The importers are much better at providing a lot of transparency in the kinds of businesses that they often run and what they have to offer. DuPont, another one, the wool industry, the Wool Council provides a list of suppliers who use their yarns. Lindsay does the same thing. So it's another way to find sources. But and I mentioned Makers Grow as being one of the strong sources, but unfortunately, like I said, they charge, but perhaps you'll feel like you want to spend $19 to access it. It is a pretty amazing site. Other ways to get information about the supply chain, certainly the trade shows. as we all know, Magic is happening right now in Las Vegas. So you have an opportunity, and they always have a section of the show that focuses on Made in the USA. Let's see if they do that. How that this time. It's like, maybe that's made here. So, they'll talk about companies who were there and that they make things here in the United States, who the suppliers are. Cooperating with me, so. But, again, this trade show is not the most transparent about who are the companies they really want you to go to the show. Can't have those. The LA Textile Show is another great one. Search box there. All kinds of problems. Let's see, what is this? California Market Center. Oops. Okay, come on. Okay, we have internet gridlock today. So twice a year, in late February, early March, and late September, early October, there at California Market Center, there is a fabric and trim and other services for the apparel industry trade show. If any of you, I know it's going to be while you guys are on your break. But if you happen to be working for somebody by then, you should see if you can get, you can get a pass, because you do have to have credentials to go to the show, just like you do for Magic. I don't know what's going on with the internet today. This is just unbelievable. So, to log out and not to do. There's another trade show in New York, Tex World. They used to have a couple shows a year here in Los Angeles. No longer, but again, you'll see a lot of different U.S.-based companies as well as international. You've all heard of Premier Vision. That is another one too that's fantastic, again, in New York. And basically was a trade show that